they performed exactly as advertised. The thing that was very interesting to me, and something that I've observed in the past too, was the muzzle velocity numbers. These being significantly higher than 2550. And I mean, they just pop and they look like, just take the most catastrophic wound cavity you could imagine, scale it down.
What is up, everybody? Mark on the mic, my good friend, Mr. Ryan Muckenhern, across from me, and welcome to Cartridge Talks Fully Loaded. This is 17 HMR versus 22 Mag, mass versus velocity, which the mass on the 22 Mag side, velocity on the 17 HMR side. Who wins in this deal, Ryan? We shot some gel, ran some numbers. This is an interesting one.
It is. Point of order. MC Ryan was clever enough to fashion us a tool that I promptly broke, which really was a bee in Mark's bonnet.
It aggravated me. Here's why it aggravated me.
Now, hold on.
I wasn't going to bring it up.
Let me finish. Mark fixed it, and he did a really good job. Go ahead,
Thank you, Ryan. I was aggravated because I was excited about this because I saw it on the table. I only assumed that it came from MC Ryan's kit from his former employment. I'd hold the item up here, Ryan. I mean, like, at first glance, you might think, oh, yeah, you could cut some gel with that thing. I think you could do a few other things with it. Now, not that maybe we received a faulty one, but it broke immediately. And what I felt we might miss with you pre-using it while we were not even recording anything yet, is the spontaneity and the excitement of using this for the first time. And then you said, what's going to happen, Mark? And then karma caught up to you and it broke immediately.
It did. But Mark fixed it.
You tried with some hand tools.
I did.
And I was worried you were going to stab yourself in the hand for a second there.
You were worried or you were encouraging? Because those are two different things.
Off topic.
On topic.
These are two cartridges, Ryan.
Yes, they are.
Very popular in the small game space.
I would say that one is very popular. One is gaining ground back.
Okay. One old, one
relatively new.
Yeah. You know what? In my head, talking about the 17 HMR, that was 2002, I believe? Question mark? That does not seem that long ago, and it was actually a fair bit of time ago.
What were you doing in 02, Mark?
02 was my first year at Cabela's HQ in Sydney, Nebraska.
My stars.
Yeah. Out on my own, moved away.
Fresh face Mark going in there, coffee in hand, TPS reports.
All the things.
Yeah.
It was great. I called that place second college. I mean, everybody hunted and fished. Everybody was the same age. Lots of transplants like myself. It was great.
That sounds
really
cool.
Enjoyed myself.
In 2002, I was in 8th grade.
We're that far apart, huh?
Well, I mean, you're 37, 38?
26.
26, right. Yeah, so math checks out.
I love that part of the movie Elf when he's like, I'm 26 years old when they're down in the mailroom.
Yeah. And he's like very clearly at least 30.
Yeah, at least. Rimfires are fun.
Rimfires are fun.
We love the 22 long rifle. I better say that correctly. These are neither of these are that. They're a little spiced up.
Yep.
One a little bit heavier, one light and fast.
Yeah, so 30 versus 17 grains, respectively. That's the 22 WMR at 30 grains, 17 HMR at 17 grains. That's nearly double the mass.
Pretty crazy.
That's not insignificant.
It's not, but velocity-wise, I've got our numbers here in my cellular telephone, Ryan.
Did you run some geoballistics data?
Well, I've just got some. So at least for us, they were coming out the muzzle, the 22 Mag or WMR, Winchester Magnum Rimfire, 2150, and then for the 17 HMR, 2739. Pretty significant discrepancy there.
Significantly hotter than the box posted velocity, which is 2550.
We don't see that very often.
Not so much.
What's your take on what we saw? So on the table here in front of us, if you're watching on YouTube, we have 2 gel blocks. We shot both of these at 50 and 100 yards. I think those are 2 ranges that exemplify the window in which both of these are going to be optimal.
Yes.
Can you stretch it beyond that?
Certainly.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Has it been done? Yes. Probably with great efficacy in some instances. I will say I shot a coyote with a 17 HMR at probably about $1.50 one time. Did not recover said coyote.
Nope. The result, I've seen that as well at much shorter than that distance. And the result found was the same. We did recover that coyote, but it was many hours later.
Okay.
And by happenstance, I believe. But
And don't take my little anecdotal story as my final position on which of these 2 cartridges I would likely ultimately select.
Yeah.
For what I think that they're good for. I lost my train of thought, right?
Well, you asked me what I thought about
Yeah.
what we found. And I guess I came into this thinking one way. And I guess I walked out of it maybe thinking halfway is another.
What were your preconceived notions about maybe both of these or what you thought was going to perform better?
So I did a little bit of work with the 17 HMR at a previous job. And then, of course, I've known about the cartridge for a long time because I retailed firearms, and they were hot. I can't tell you how many Savage 93R17 BTV SSs I had ordered and sold. They were fire, as the kids say.
There's a handful of cartridges that have come out in my lifetime that have the day they're introduced.
Just fire.
Yep. Fanfare, buzz.
Yep.
Every manufacturer's championing rifles in it. Everybody's clamoring to get one.
Clamoring. Good word.
And the 17 HMR is one of those.
Absolutely. In fact, I remember kind of when they were hitting scene, they were being touted not by Hornady, not by any of the firearms manufacturers, but by some of the retailers in my region as an honest 300-yard coyote rifle, which you'd look at it and you'd think, nah, that's suspect. You'd be correct. But a stellar varminting cartridge they are. And, I guess my thought was, when we were going to get into this, is that the 22 WMR was going to illustrate just a significantly better solution from an energy standpoint, a penetrative standpoint, a terminal ballistic standpoint. And the reality was that is not necessarily what we observed.
Well, and I think at the 22 WMR has an energy advantage at the closer ranges. But I think in general, and again, and I'm talking about these things really outside the window of where I would use them, but I think about the 150-yard mark.
Yeah.
The 17 actually starts to eclipse its energy.
Yeah, significantly.
How important that it is to me, I don't know, because, 150 is probably the absolute outside of the envelope that I'm going to try and at least take a critter with one of these things.
I'd agree.
Now, I say that, I don't know. Maybe I'd try and stretch it on a prairie dog or something like that, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's fine. I've shot prairie dogs with 22 LR at longer distances than that.
Sure.
And one thing I'll say is the result that you believe would happen, and with 17 HMR, the result that you believe would happen would be especially on a prairie dog analog, which I don't do that. But you hit them and you'd expect them to kind of pop and flip.
The old pink mist.
Yeah. The reality was you'd hit them. If you hit them good, they'd tip over. If you didn't, there'd be a kerfuffle.
Well, they generally just go, ugh, and then they crawl back in their hole.
Yeah. It's kind of why I don't like doing it. But
yeah.
I digress. The results found on the gel were interesting. And I will say this too. Mark and I shot a couple different types of gel. We didn't just shoot the clear stuff that we've got in front of us. We also shot ordnance grade because we wanted to, as we'd mentioned before in a couple of previous podcasts.
Not just the Pepsi Clear.
Yeah, right. Remember Pepsi Clear? Yeah. It's a big deal. What do they call it? Like Cristal or something?
I don't know. It was
just clear.
Pepsi Clear.
One of them was called Cristal. I don't remember what it was, but
well, and then I remember SNL did kind of a spoof on it with Crystal Gravy.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. That could be.
Cristal. That sounds like something you might sip on.
Right. I actually thought it was going to be really different into the ordnance gel. It was really the same.
Yeah, that was curious. So let's talk about these results here and what we saw with these impacts. This is the 100 yard. That's closer to me.
You have both 17s right there.
These are both 17s.
Yep.
When I look at this, it's probably really hard to see on camera.
It's hard to see up close. Those are some teeny tiny fragments. There's not a lot going on there.
There's not a lot going on. Bullet expands fragments considerably, and then does carry forward. Probably about, I'm going to say 8-9 inches, something like that. It's doing everything that I would expect it to do.
It looks like a picture book.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like violent wound cavity. This is the VMAX bullet, Hornady's VMAX bullet. I got to say I have a lot of admiration for the production of this little rascal. I've been to the plant and I've seen the VMAX bullet machine.
Okay.
And it's cute. It is super neat.
I mean, does it just spit out these?
Just a bajillion of these little 17 grain VMAXs into a bucket, and they just come out and they just look perfect. They just look so cute.
Oh, they're a petite little.
They
thing.
remind me of a miniaturized 30R Blaser cartridge, scaled appropriately. But they performed exactly as advertised. The thing that was very interesting to me, and something that I've observed in the past too, was the muzzle velocity numbers. These being significantly higher than 2550. We had some outliers in the mid 28s, many in the 2700 range. The lows, I think the lowest observed MV was in the 24s, but most of them were all higher. Mm-hmm. And quite a bit higher, which also is going to play into the downrange effectiveness of the cartridge at extended distances. At 100 yards, not that big a deal. You're not really going to see that show up on the two-dimensional analog that is our target. But as we start stretching it out further, if you have a delta in velocity, between your low and your high, you're going to see that as vertical dispersion, mm-hmm. right? And they're going to be affected by wind differently and that kind of thing. But as far as their performance on the gel, the 17 did exactly what I thought, hoped, and prayed it would, and it did perfect. I mean, It was awesome. And I mean, they just pop and they look like, just take the most catastrophic wound cavity you could imagine, scale it down.
Well, and I think what I see here, I'm like, perfect, right? Let's say maybe you're shooting a coon around the house, or you got groundhogs or whatever, what have you. I think both you and I subscribe to, like, hey, if we can get good penetration, 2 holes on big game, that's gonna be great. Not necessarily what I'm looking for how I would intend to use this cartridge. So really, this is like,
maybe the opposite of what you're looking for.
Exactly.
Yes.
And on the 100 yard, or excuse me, on the 50 yard, Ryan,
that might have made 6 inches of depth.
So to be expected, higher impact velocity, stopped a little quicker. Again, nice permanent wound cavity, not a ton of penetration. Any small critter is going to be in big
tough shape.
Trouble.
Tough shape. If that entered the old rib cage, it'd be spaghetti meatballs, man. That'd be tough. I was very impressed by the 17.
No flies on it.
Not at all.
Should we look at the 22s?
I think so.
Because I think that's where the bulk of this conversation is going to happen, is really comparing the gel of the two. And also, I'm going to preface this. When we look at these bullets of the 22 mag, I'm still not. Well, let's just look at them.
Okay. Brief pause.
All right. Before we talk about these 22 megs that we have on the table right now, Ryan, I want to weigh what we were able to recover at, we'll call it the final resting spot of both of these 17 HMRs here.
Go ahead and fill this pan with your goods.
Yes, with my gold dust. This one, it was more together before we tried to pull it out. I'll say that. It kind of came apart as we were removing it, but I think
it should be known that this is the bullet doing exactly what it should be doing.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll say that. Done goofing? Okay. So.
Oh, we didn't predict.
9 grains. 9.1.
I was going to say 10.
9.1. We retained 9.1.
This one will be interesting to see. So that was the 50-yard
That's
impact.
Right. Yep.
A little bit more integrity here on the 100-yard impact. What are you giving this one?
12.6.
12.6?
Yeah.
I'm going to give it, gosh, that's a good guess.
Oh, that's pretty good guess.
12 even.
All right.
What?
None of that makes sense, but actually maybe it does. I mean, you look at this piece here. This is a pretty big piece. What's cute about this is you can see the heel of the bullet right at the end of it.
Yeah.
I guess. Maybe. That one looks more substantial. It certainly is not.
At the end of the day, about the same, I guess.
Yeah, within a few tenths of a grain. Well, that's kind of cool. Came completely apart. Well, you can see the heel of the bullet on there, too. Yeah,
right.
There's more goo here. It all makes sense.
But like you said, I mean, it only started off at 17.
That's true.
Acknowledge that. And it did. I mean, when I think of a VMAX, that's what I think it's going to do.
Yeah.
Cool, man. All right. So on the table now, we have the 22 meg. And I would say overall,
the one's on low impact. It's way down there.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. We got it going.
No, it's going the right way.
It's going this way.
Oh, yeah. I thought that's what we wanted.
No.
Oh.
It's going to go the same way. It's hard to look at like this, I think.
That one's hard to see because there was a low strike on the block. So this was fascinating. This is not the result that I had foreshadowed, perhaps. When you look at these blocks, from at least where Mark and I are sitting, and you probably see them, you'll notice there's a lot of hits on this one.
Mm-hmm.
There are 5. And you're like, oh, that's got a really big wound cavity in it. This was pretty curious. Those bullets hit and immediately inverted.
Mm-hmm.
And that inversion is where you see that big, giant permanent wound cavity. Curiously, they all look about identical, where the nose piece pulls out of the bullet, part of the bullet peels down, and then the inversion happens. It is oddly identical. That inversion happens later at the 100-yard block.
Mm-hmm.
The bullet's final resting position, so total penetration, and the size of that permanent wound cavity are nearly identical at the two distances. Things that didn't happen that surprised me is that bullet didn't expand.
I was pretty shocked by that. On some of the impacts, we got slight deformation. The tip would come out. You've got, like some
peel back.
Some peel back there. But yeah, I was shocked by that just because, every VMAX that I've ever shot or seen hit a critter.
Rapid.
Devastating, right? So, but to me, this begs the question.
Is that bad?
Is that bad?
I don't know.
We've got high weight retention. You still have a nasty permanent wound cavity there.
Oh, yeah.
Where it tumbled. I don't know, is that the right word for that?
Tumbled is, yeah.
Okay.
Inverted is more confusing. Tumbled makes more sense.
And I also think maybe on a slightly larger statured critter at close range, is the result going to be
beneficial, advantageous,
and also if you introduce, like, let's say a coon shoulder or something like that,
Sure.
is it going to be consistent with what we see from like a VMAX?
Sure.
Like, are we going to see more of what we saw with the 17?
Yeah, I don't know.
Introducing some structure or something like that.
I can't answer that because I don't know. But this was when we pivoted to the ordnance gel because we thought, hey, maybe this is a situation in which the clear solution is not providing us with ideal results. Right?
I seriously was like, here we go again.
Yep. And then when we switched to the ordnance gel, it was the same. It was identical. There was no difference. And so I don't know if this is just like it's overbuilt for this test medium and it does require the bone that you talked about to disrupt that bullet enough that it tears apart. If it's just under the velocity threshold that's required to get into rip apart, who knows? I mean, this is not an aerodynamically fantastic bullet. Its BC is like 0.095, whereas the 17 is like a 0.2 and change. So it's shedding velocity very quickly. According to the back of the box of ammunition, if you had a launch velocity of 2,200 feet per second, your 100-yard impact velocity is 1,420. So not, it's 800 feet per second lost. And our launch was maybe slightly slower than that. Whereas the 17, we were launching those on an average of like 2,750. And, that's impacting that block about the same velocity that the 22 WMR leaves the barrel.
Sure.
So there's something to be said there.
I really would have expected
more disruption.
And I'd say particularly at the 50-yard.
Yeah.
block.
Oh, yeah.
Again, though, you've got more mass there.
Yep.
Larger frontal diameter.
Yep.
It is doing things.
Undoubtedly. Like the inverted wound cavity. And actually, this is before the inversion. There's like, right before it flips, there's definitely a larger permanent wound cavity. And that's just displacement doing its job, right? Then the inversion occurs. You get this other wound cavity. It was very curious, man. It was super quizzical. It was not what I expected. It made me kind of rethink. Because I was a stick in the mud about this one. I was like, 22 WMR is going to be the answer all the way through and through. Like horsepower. Like mass wins king. It still may. I don't know.
I'm left with a few question marks.
Yeah, it still may. I don't know.
And is some of that situational?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, okay. And then I think, well, if I shot, like, let's say a groundhog around the house, this is still going to work quite handily.
Yeah.
If I shot a coon around the house, it's still going to work. It is going to absolutely do the job. I'm confident in that. And then I also think, maybe something a little bit bigger.
Sure. Coyote.
Is it coyote?
Yeah.
100 yards and in? Is it actually, even though like what we're seeing as a final result here
doesn't look as good, but actually is better?
Right.
Yeah. So you made an interesting statement about especially like around the residence vermin, not wanting to have a projectile exit the animal, right? So this is like a ricochet concern. And of course, you should always know your target and what's beyond. But, if you're in that semi-urban spot where, it would be undesirable to have a secondary projectile leave the target and go an erratic direction. The 17s unquestionably got it, right? They came apart completely. And we end up with sub 10 grain mass, penetrating perhaps 8 inches of material.
Right.
Whereas these are 20-inch blocks. That bullet launched at 30. I'm going to guess it weighs probably 26, 28. I mean, it went, 80% of the way, 90% of the way. We're leaving probably 3.5 inches on the table there.
And I think maybe if you're scaling up critters, like you think about, maybe you had a coyote quartering away.
Yeah, you'd want that.
Right.
Yeah, but you could also overpenetrate on a smaller creature.
Right.
Yeah. So it was weird. That's not what I thought was going to happen. I was very curious to see what a 30 grain VMAX out of a 22 WMR looked like on target. And it looks a lot like a 30 grain VMAX without its tip on target and backwards.
Right.
And again, small sample size here. We don't have varying tissue density. We don't have bone. We don't have, fat, any of the other things that open bullets up. We just have this and ordnance grade gel, which, by the way, melted. So we didn't use it for this demonstration. But it was interesting. I came back and went, well, golly, what is the better play? Then it really came down for me, like putting these two head to head. It really comes down to like trajectory advantage,
wind
drift, energy on target, and the accuracy award unquestionably went to the 17 HMR.
Mm-hmm.
Energy on target unquestionably to the 17 HMR. Terminal performance, I suppose it depends on what you subscribe to. I'm a big penetration guy, but I also like the bullet to deploy. 17 HMR. The suppression was far better in the 22 WMR. It was significantly quieter. And that's just a velocity thing, right?
Sure.
Significantly quieter. It was still quiet, the 17 was, but it was not like one was a loud crack, one was kind of a muffled puff, sort of. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm still vexed by this one because I want to love the 22 WMR more, personally.
It's one of those things where I'm shocked that I'm still in as much of a quandary as I am.
Yeah.
Of all the cartridge talks that we've done,
this is it. This is the one.
This is the one that stumped me a little bit. But yeah, I think looking at. Oh, sorry.
You keep talking. I'm cutting.
No, you cut away. I think you're going to get to that one real quick.
Yeah, this one's pretty easy. It's pretty much like subdermal. But yeah, like this one, I'm not going to say it stumped me, but it was like I had a definite preconceived notion of which one was going to be the very clear and present victor. And I walked away like, well, Ryan, you may have learned something.
Well, and I was just a little surprised with the result, and I'm like, well, did we do something wrong? But we tried both types of gel, and maybe at least both types of gel that we have.
Here you go, Mark. Wager your guess.
Started at 30. I'm going to say 28.
Well, I was going to say 28, so I'll say 28.1. He will never forgive me if it's 28.2. 29.4. So effectively, we lost the plastic tip, which we've never weighed, so I don't know what those weigh, but now we know. Yeah, I'm with you, Mark. I think that if you had a larger creature, that Wile E coyote, I think, probably 22 WMR gives me a little bit more confidence. And I also arrive at that having seen a coyote shot with a 17 HMR, and I was not impressed with what I saw. Weigh that one there, Mark. It's shaped a little different.
I'm going to say the exact same thing.
28?
No, I'm going to say 29.4.
29.3.
Oops. I might have shaved off that last little bit for you. 29.8.
I don't know what to say. Nothing makes sense to me anymore.
Up is down, black is white. Cats are chasing dogs. If you pressed me here.
Yep. I am. You got to have one.
Are we doing final thoughts? Is this our conclusion?
I mean, it's tough. It's not inconclusive, right? Like we're looking at the test. We fired it over the chronograph. We did the numbers. They don't lie. I mean, we saw what we saw. We did what we did. This is the result that we have.
Focus group of one.
Yep. You have to pick.
The weird thing is I feel like I should be my conclusion should be so concrete.
Yeah.
And because of the numbers, because of what we saw, right? And you nailed a bunch of it, Ryan. Velocity.
Yep.
17 HMR.
Big time.
BC, 17 HMR.
Huge.
Wind drift, 17 HMR.
Huge.
At distance, the energy actually surpasses the 22 meg.
By a margin.
Accuracy. It won.
Oh, yeah.
And also, I'll say, for the size of critters and the work that I want to do with these things, I think the HMR is suited quite well to do all those things. I picked the 17 HMR.
I think you've made the right choice. You know, another thing too on 22 WMRs, they've not always been renowned for spectacular accuracy. In that there are many rifles chambered in them. Not many of them have been touted as spectacular shooters. And that's been my observation. That's been what I've heard. There's been some rare exception. The CZs seem to shoot like a house of fire. Good friend of Vortex and podcast listener Trent recently acquiesced a Volquartsen 22 WMR. It shoots very well. So there's exceptions to that rule. The Galdang 17 seems to be kind of cool. I've always thought it would make a fantastic pigeon cartridge.
Why do you speculate the accuracy of the 22 meg? Is it just that this bullet is?
I think
it's not. It doesn't look like a race car.
No, I think what it is that it's jacketed, and I think that I think when you're working at that velocity band, like there's an inherent forgiveness to lead, and it's actually it's higher than a lot of lead, like a cast projectile. Whereas if you were to shoot, say, a 45-70 at 2,200 feet per second, you'd want to be gas checking that, or you'd want to be shooting a jacketed bullet, right? But I think that, you know, maybe it's like an obturation issue. There's not enough gas behind it to expand that out, fill those lands and grooves. Maybe those lands and grooves are so light that they just don't engrave that bullet as much, or maybe it's a consistency situation where, you know, unlike a 22 LR that is a heeled bullet, meaning the major diameter of the projectile is actually greater than that of the case, or at least equal to that of the case. This is a case that goes around the projectile. This is akin to a miniaturized 45-70.
I mean, right? This is a straight wall cartridge.
It is, yeah. You know, maybe it's inconsistencies with the neck tension. The crimp is damaging the jacket. I don't know. I'm speculating at best. I've never loaded rimfires. You can do it. It's an act of futility from those that I've talked to that have done it. You know, maybe it's something like that. And the 17 just doesn't have that same level of woe because we're working with a more conventional neck, you know, and then, you know, more traditional bullet shape. But I don't know. You know, is it the guns? Is it the ammunition? I know the guys down at Hornady really poured the gas onto the development of the 17 HMR to make a hyper-accurate rimfire cartridge, very high performing. There have been many like it over the years. None have enjoyed the success that the 17 HMR did. You know, Hornady has kind of a smaller analog to this called the 17 Mach 2, which I've always thought, just because the cartridge is adorable, would be my preference. You know, same bullet, you know, a little 17 VMAX at a slightly slower velocity, and then on a 22 Stinger case, as opposed to a 22 WMR neck down. That was a kind of a short-lived thing. I always wanted a Sacco quad, which is a rimfire that Sacco built. They called it quad because you could get 4 barrels, 22 LR, 17 Mach 2, 17 HMR, 22 WMR. Same gun, 4 barrels. Really novel design. They go for a lot of money now. And I really wanted that Mach 2. I digress. There's been the 17 Wism, which is very interesting. It's a 28 caliber nail gun blank, neck down to 17. That's approaching the performance values of 17 Hornet and actually possibly exceeding them. I'd have to look back at the numbers. It's been a minute since I've peeked at those. But is you know, indisputably the most powerful rimfire in kind of this class. And I really haven't seen the love for it. You know, I've had a handful of them come in the shop here, and I think that's more of the guns they chamber them in. They're not awesome. Whereas like a 17 HMR, we used a pretty budget-minded solution. It was the Savage 93 SRs. So very affordable, reasonably accurate. Mark, you laid down some spectacular groups with yours. And you can go all the way. I mean, you can get a very deluxe rifle in 17 HMR. Not so much in 17 Wisdom. And that's, you know, this one just stuck. It just made sense and it stuck. Prior to it, there was the 5mm Remington Magnum. That was had come and gone very quickly. It was reintroduced by, I think Taurus was kind of the one who brought it back.
It's one I'm aware of that I just haven't really not heard a heck of a lot about.
Yeah, it was a neat thing long ago. Brought back, died. Yeah, Hornady hit an absolute home run with 17 HMR. It's a very pleasurable cartridge to shoot too. Of course, it's rimfire. It generates effectively zero recoil, and the report is not undue. With a suppressor on there, is very pleasant. We could have shot it without Ear Pro.
Economical to shoot.
Yeah,
both these are.
Yep. I think the 17 wins an award there too, though. I think it's slightly less.
I'd have to look, but if it is, another tip of the hat. Yeah, speed kills.
It does.
I think velocity wins the day. I think velocity and just the design of the cartridge and the delivery package here is
superior in the 17.
Is superior in the 17. It's doing what I would use either of these cartridges for. It's doing the better job.
I agree.
I
agree.
There, I said it's out there.
That was conclusive.
Yeah.
We waffled, Mark, but we really arrived at the right answer, I think.
Well, and what I was trying to say before is, why am I waffling? Is it because I wanted to like the 22 mag more?
I think that's where I was. I think it's a social thing. I think if I was uncomfortable with myself saying I like the 17 HMR.
But why?
I don't know. I can't say it. Like, I don't want the wrong person to hear that and be like, can't handle the 22 WMR. Mama said you couldn't handle the V8. something along those lines. But yeah, it just seems to be the better mousetrap. That's funny because this would be an appropriate mousetrap.
It would, yes.
Yeah, man, dang it.
But I can run myself in circles too and say like, either still going to do what you needed to do for what we're talking about.
I agree. What I think though, notwithstanding those little pistols that have come out in the past couple of years, chambered in 22 WMR for home defense or personal defense.
That Smith & Wesson.
Yeah.
You get 30 chances in that thing.
You do. And hey, maybe this deserves a revisit with a different bullet. Maybe we get a different outcome. I think that in 50 years, if the audit is made of rimfire cartridges that lasted, 22 LR will still be there. 17 HMR will be in second place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's an accurate statement.
There's a couple others that are on the market. It's a 21 Sharp.
Are there folks out there, and this would be something, this is a legit question, and for the viewers, please answer this question.
Yeah.
Like when I grew up, like your first gun was a 22.
Likely.
For all the obvious reasons. Are there folks out there, are there parents out there that are skipping over the 22 long rifle and their first rifle is a 17 HMR? Like, is that a trend? Perhaps?
Could be.
Are we seeing any of that?
Tell you, that would have not been good for the neighborhood critter population for me.
Too much capability?
I used to set up, we had this, we just called it the woods next to my house. And there was a first woods, second woods, and third woods. And you had to get to it, be about at least 9 or 10 years old to make it all the way to the third woods. And when you're a kid, the distance from your home to the woods seemed very far, and the woods seemed very vast. And now, that I'm not a kid anymore, when I walked back there actually like last summer, just for like nostalgia's sake to see if like the old tree forts were still up. And one time we dug a hole as deep as we could dig a hole. It took us all summer. We had to use a ladder to get down into it. And like, I don't know what we thought we were going to do.
Sounds very safe.
Yeah. We were playing night games one time and my neighbor Joey fell in it. He was running. And
yikes.
He just heard, ooh, and he went in the hole and it was full of like mosquito water and stuff. But I used to set up for rabbits. I identified a rabbit warren, a place where rabbits would often den. And, now, I thought it was like 150 yards. When I was a kid, it's like 36, and I used to set up there and I'd wait for rabbits to come out and then I'd shoot them with a 22. And, you know, I missed, and I miss all the time, but I missed often enough. I always thought it was because it was like, you know, just too far. And if I had had a 17, man, there'd have been 0 rabbits left. A lot got away. There'd have been none if I'd have had a 17.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you'd been able to stand off a little bit.
Yeah. Every so often we'd tango with a raccoon. We'd get lucky, but took a lot of squirrels out of that woods. Took a lot of rabbits out of that woods. The occasional raccoon. Used to have jackrabbits back there.
Oh, interesting.
Yep. Now, the last place I ever saw a jackrabbit in McLeod County, Minnesota was the McLeod County Municipal Airport. That was it. And they were gone.
Yeah, I don't picture jackrabbits being in that country.
I think for a time there was, but that was long ago, Mark. That was almost 30 years ago.
Goodness gracious, how time flies.
I think 17's a cool cartridge, Joe.
I like it.
I don't own one.
I don't either.
I don't own a 22 WMR for that matter either.
I don't own one of those. I actually would have gone coon calling last weekend, but it was that the polar vortex.
It was cold.
I didn't not go because of the temps, because I could have gone out for a while to dress properly. I just didn't think the raccoon activity was going to be
high,
and you know, even if I set up the call right outside their den, I wasn't sure they were going to come out and play.
That's not worth it.
So, but I might have to borrow one of these from the shop and go test these theories for ourselves.
In fact,
we should plan on that.
In fact,
anything else? Parting thoughts?
Rimfires are cool. I may be mistaken, but there might be a state that allows you to hunt deer with 22 WMR.
Possible. I'm not aware, but it doesn't mean that it's a thing.
I know some captive cervid herd guys that have used 17s for dispatching.
Sure.
Yep. Works okay. You have to be very selective about bullet placement. Their preferred shot was critter facing away, right at the base of the head where the spine meets the skull.
That junction.
Yep.
Kind of where you try to remove it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Well, what do you think after this one? You know, what you saw between these two. And again, focus group of one style of bullet. Like you said, you know, we didn't shoot multiple types of bullets, so, you know, maybe that remains to be seen too.
Yeah.
Like, I worry that we left something on the table here.
I think so. It's nice when we can have, like, try to keep things as even-steven as possible. You know, we're using Hornady's, you know, Magnum Rimfire loadings. Try to give it a fair shake. You know what, though? In every category, 17 was just better. Period. Right.
I mean, realistically, you could just go look at the numbers and go, I'll get one of these. Yeah. This can do what I want.
In every category, it was better.
Yeah. Interesting. All right, guys. Well, thank you for listening. Ryan, thank you for shooting some guns with me and hanging out and pulling bullets out of gel. It's always a good time. What are your thoughts on this? Do you have one of these? Do you have both of these? Have you hunted these? Did we get it right? Did we get it wrong? And I mean this. Let us know in the comments below. Boy, the more information, the better. We'll catch you on the next one.
See ya.
Bye, everybody.
There you have it, folks. Thank you very much for listening. As usual, give this video a like if you liked it, comment something below, and give us a subscribe to the Vortex Nation podcast channel. It would mean a lot to us. Also, why don't you give us a follow over on Instagram while you're at it, at Vortex Nation Podcast. We'd love to hear from you over there, and we'll keep you updated with all kinds of cool photos and videos from our adventures that we do here. Otherwise, we will see you on the next one. Thank you again. Happy hunting and shooting, everybody. Have a good one.